Welcome, everybody, to the first guest episode of the Creationship Goals. And today we have my friend, Raji Ahsan.
Hi.
Welcome.
Uh, Today we have a little setup. We're in the Petrini's Pizzeria, and David is continuing to be here over Zoom, and Raji's here in person.
What up?
How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm really glad that you're doing this. I knew you would be a really perfect first guest.
Thank you.
You're one of the best communicators I know, and
Oh.
you're patient. You have a kind heart.
I'm not patient by nature. That's a choice.
Yes.
That's a choice too.
Is it so? Would you then say that you're more an impatient in like?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think everybody's impatient by nature. I think
Why?
everybody is impatient by nature.
Oh,
I think
okay.
patience is learned.
Ooh.
How do you learn patience?
Well, first, you need people in your life who are telling you that it needs to be learned. You need people in your life who can tell you the truth and say, that behavior is impatient, that's impatient, that over there is impatient. And then when you are aware, then you take the steps to learn it. And I break those things down very practically. So when I need to learn something, I go into the practical. What are the steps I could take? So for me, patience is found in my breath.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel tension of anger, I take a breath and release the tension, and I keep breathing. And if I feel impatient, I slow my breath down. It slows my heart rate down. It slows my mind down. And then I say, I'm not in control of this thing, whatever the thing is that's making me impatient or angry, and give it over to God.
That's amazing. And I see that in you. So
it's a practice.
yeah, a little bit about you. You are an actor and a writer.
Yeah.
And you're a communication coach.
Sure.
Communication, what would you call that?
I did call myself a communication coach. I'm not doing so much communication coaching anymore as I am writing about my theory of communication.
Okay.
But I call myself an actor and a writer with a specification in human connection research. What connects us? What stops us from connecting? And how do we really receive each other? Does that make sense?
How did you even get to that point? Like you give it real big words, and there's a point where you get there. You know, there is depth of personal research and reflection before you get there. What was your starting point? How did you even get here?
I started studying acting.
Even in that word, what you said, like the. Because we will get to the acting at one point, but
I'm telling you, David, I'm sorry to cut you off. Everything is related. Every single thing is related. And the reason I find myself here now is because of the thing that happened yesterday, that happened before that day, that happened before that. Everything is a response. Today is a response to yesterday. Yesterday is a response to the day before that. And it all started when I went to acting school. Because acting training is learning how to listen. The best actors are great listeners. And within my acting training, I also got voice training, which is why you hear this very resonant, buttery thing. And so I needed to make money in New York when I wasn't acting. So I started to teach voice lessons, speaking lessons. But people didn't care about their voices, and I couldn't find clients that way. But people did care about how they were communicating. How does their voice sound when they're angry? How does their voice sound when they're sad? How does their voice sound when they're happy? And so instead of teaching voice, I started to teach communication, how to make yourself how to express yourself clearly in moments of very high emotional tension. And then from there, it went into human connection, because we're all looking for connection. Right? And acting school is the study of connection. Does that make sense?
It does. That's good.
So I'm sorry to cut you off that way, but it started there in acting school.
No, that's great. I think just it's really. I think it is really easy to disconnect those things. We're
Yeah.
talking about communication as being something that is, it drenches everything we do.
Hmm.
It influences everything, and it is evident in everything. Uh, so just to give you a bit of perspective to like when you say things like research, do you talk with people? Do
Hmm.
you like you said you did work with people because you said
Hmm.
that you did do some coaching? Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, I used to do one-on-one coaching with people. I still do one-on-one coaching when I am available. I do corporate workshops. I go into businesses and I talk to businesses, the teams, about how they are talking to each other
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not their goals are, whether or not they have common goals and they're all reaching them together, or whether or not everybody is disjointed. I have clients that I talk just on their personal communication. How do you talk to your husband? How do you talk to your wife? How do you talk to your boss? Do you feel that you communicate in fear, or do you feel that you communicate in your love and your authority? Things like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, good.
So relating that to acting,
Yeah.
how does that make you a better actor? Or even bigger than that, how does that make you a better creative?
There's a manifold answer there. The more people you interview, the more human catalog you have in your mind. And so the more experiences you can put on text when, if you're an actor.
Mhm.
Um, as I can read something and think, oh, that reminds me of this person that I used to coach, or that reminds me, sorry, all of my students who I used to coach. Sometimes I use you. I apologize. Um, um, and also, I mean, if I'm really listening to my whomever my communication student is, I have my own discoveries while we're working
Mhm.
about, oh, this is, this is why you exploded in this moment. We think you're exploding in that moment because of you're angry in that moment, but really it's that thing that happened to you 5 years ago that's now showing up. So much of acting is we see a character in the moment on film or on television or on stage, but what makes that person compelling as an actor is all of the back history of that character that informs the moment, that makes that person a full human that the audience is never going to know about. And so when I'm doing communication work with people, I'm taking bits and pieces of their stories and putting them into the character stories that I play. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm. That
amazing.
does.
Yeah. It's all a catalog. Every experience that we have, every single experience that we have is a catalog to use later for some kind of creation if you're a creative of some kind. So you can use any experience. I mean, you can use sitting in traffic on the 405 or somewhere in the Netherlands. You can use technological mishaps as an experience. Everything. Watching you touch your chin is an experience for me. If I'm present enough in the moment to like catalog things as I'm, and then it gets to be really annoying because then you think, oh, enough of the cataloging, just be here with your friend.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
so
Then
you
and
try to strike
suddenly
the balance.
everything becomes this like everything becomes another communication session in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the worst thing.
Yeah, yeah,
What
it can
is
be,
it?
it can
Can
be
you just give
awful.
a moment? Can you just tell us a moment maybe that you had with friends or family that you really had to cut yourself off? Like, okay, this is not. Now I'm going into this communication session
it,
thing.
it happens with my mom all the time because I can right now I'm crashing in my mom's house while I save a little money. I was in New York for 10 years. Now I'm back in Los Angeles where I was born and raised, and I'm in mom's house saving money, and I can hear her. She's not going to listen to this. I highly doubt this. My mom is not your audience.
Oh,
Um,
just in case. Hi, mom.
Hi, mom. I can hear my mom in her meetings at work because everybody's working from home now. And the way that she communicates in those meetings very often is not healthy and a little fear based. And so I'm like, do I bring that up with her, or do I shut myself in my bedroom, or do I gotta leave? I gotta leave. Um, and there are times when I'll be fighting with my mom, or like fighting with this is awful. This never do this. But I'll be fighting with my mom or fighting with a friend, and I'll step out of the fight and start to critique the way that they're fighting, which is so terrible. It's so, so terrible. That's my arrogance and my pride going, well, you could be more generous right now, or, you could listen to me, but it's just the worst. As opposed to being humble and saying, I'm sorry I've made you feel that way. I'm working on that one. I've gotten better. I mean, I used to explode at my mom all the time. And she says that I'm not exploding all the time anymore. Now it's sometimes, that's good.
Great. But going back to you're looking at your entire life as a whole, what was it that got you interested in this? Like, as a creative person, something in you just sparked to gain this passion about acting, communication. What was it that sparked that? And do you believe that is part of your purpose?
Okay, well, I believe that my purpose is to teach others around me and myself how to listen to one another. That's my purpose. I'm really, really good at helping two people understand each other. Specifically, if they're disagreeing, I'm very, very good at helping people empathize, because pain feels the same. It doesn't matter what the cause is, but anger feels like anger, sadness feels like sadness, betrayal feels like betrayal. It doesn't matter how or why that's happened. Those feelings are the same. And so if we can understand that my pain feels like your pain, then we really are the same thing. And maybe therefore we won't judge each other so much. That's my purpose. I'm really good at that. And again, that came from acting training. Acting, my desire to act came from watching I Love Lucy as a kid. With my grandma, I watched I Love Lucy and the Carol Burnett show, and the Golden Girls. I was probably too young for the Golden Girls, but I love that show. But really watching I Love Lucy and the amount of joy with which I was filled watching that show, I thought I could do that. I didn't know if I could at that point. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that and fill myself and others with that kind of uproarious joy in terms of the comedy. And then from there, I started doing drama at church. And then from there, I started doing drama in high school. And then I got accepted to NYU and then went there and studied it and realized that acting training is like a whole other thing from sitcom acting and blah, 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 blah. Right. But I like where it's led me. But does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's cool. You're also really interested in the art and craft of acting, like the things that make different types of acting so special. I mean, I know you went to New York because you got that theater bite.
That's not why I went there. No, I went to New York because I had one teacher at Long Beach City say, you need to go to New York City and train.
Okay.
And I thought I was going to graduate from Los Alamitos High School and go get an internship at Warner Brothers in a writer's room and write comedy. That's what I thought I was going to do. And my mom said, no, you have to go to a university. And at the time, if I could go back, I probably would have gone to Warner Brothers and interned in the writing room and gone the route of the Groundlings or UCB or something like that and done comedy. I'm thankful for my training in the craft, like my stage training, because it led me to where I am now. But keep going. Now that you know how I got there, what's your question?
No, that's great. I find that very fascinating. You are one of the most passionate people I know when it comes to acting and creating characters and learning the ability to listen. You have taught me so much about listening and being present in the moment that you're in. And I think that's very biblical. I think that is.
We could talk about Jesus on this thing.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, well, then the whole thing just cracked open. Jesus. I love him. I love him.
That's great.
I love him. 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 And I would not be sitting here right now if it weren't for him. Period.
Is that physically or spiritually?
Yes.
Mentally?
Yes.
All the above?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, I would agree with that for myself.
Yeah. Anyway, I keep cutting you off. I'm so sorry. So you were saying to me about my love for the craft and listening and how that's biblical, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's really special. I think that is one of my favorite aspects of acting, because I think I think Jesus was a good performer because he was such a good listener. I think he was a good, and I say performer lightly, not in the way that he was fake or put on any kind of presence, but he was in front of people and he was himself wholly, which is what you are so gifted at. You are able to be yourself wholly in front of people, and it's always come just natural to you. As I could say for myself as well, it's easy for me to be in front of people. It's easy for me to bear myself. And
I thought it was easy for me. It's easy now. I thought it was easy, and then I went to school and it got incredibly hard because I realized that I was not being myself in front of people. I was hiding in front of people. And then my teachers cracked me open. And that was the most painful thing I ever experienced. I mean, truly the most painful thing I ever experienced. And then when I was cracked open and sobbing in front of everybody and looking like a complete mess in front of everybody, that's when I felt the voice of Jesus say, I love you like this. And I went, what? Oh, okay. And then from that moment to now, that was probably like 2012 to now, I'm just now becoming comfortable with being that in front of people. I've always been entertaining. What you're talking about is me being entertaining.
Okay.
I've always been entertaining, but I have not always been comfortable being myself in front of people.
Okay.
Entertainment is a part of who I am, but it is not wrong. Entertainment is a part of what I am. And I had no problem being what I am in front of people, but I couldn't be who I was in front of people until I knew who I was. And I didn't know that until like 5 minutes ago. You know, but I do think that what I have and what you have, I know for sure. And I would guess you as well, Dave. I don't really know you, but you have a rare courage. You have a very rare courage. And I think that I have a very rare courage.
Right.
And what you're noticing is rare courage, not necessarily me being myself.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
There you go. And courage in and of itself is not a feeling. Courage is not a feeling. The feeling of courage is actually fear. Courage is the action accompanying fear. What feels like courage is some sense of elation, some sense of happiness, like, whoa, I just did that thing that made me so afraid. That's not courage. That's fear and then happiness because you did the thing. Courage is an action.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's like feeling, action, feeling makes courage, makes the concept of courage. And what you have and what I have is the rare ability to go feeling, action, feeling.
I see. Yeah, I would agree. I was going to ask what the relationship was between entertaining and courage. But
that's a good question.
Do you think everyone that has that natural gift of facing fear and being courageous should exercise that by learning how to kind of expose themselves or discover that thing that's inside of them that is being covered up by their desire to entertain and perform?
I don't understand the question.
Do people that cover themselves up with the desire to be in front of other people, do you think those people should learn the ability to be vulnerable?
I think every human should learn the ability to be vulnerable. That's why it's called vulnerability. I think every person needs to practice that, because I do believe that we are born into a world that is painful, that is very, very vicious and mean. And therefore, because of how vicious it is and how mean it is and how painful it is, we hide. And you can hide to an extent. I think you can hide one of two ways. You can hide by hiding, or you can hide by pretending.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Amazing.
Yeah.
You can hide by going away. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly. I'm sorry. That's exactly like for our Bible trivia listeners. What you're saying there is the Garden of Eden. because
True.
in the end, like one thing that I'm realizing is, when a baby is born, it's born vulnerable. Like
Yes.
I would even say that it's actually the idea of learning vulnerability is actually an act of reconciliation back to where we were and where we started.
Say that
And
again. Say that again.
so again, so the act of learning for vulnerability is an act of reconciliation to our identity in God.
Can I tell you what
As
God said to me last week?
tell
I
me.
was on a walk, I was praying, and I felt the voice of God say to me, Raji, you have been on a journey to return home to the man I created you to be.
Come on.
I think everything is an act of reconciliation, every single thing, because he is a perfect God and he makes a perfect thing. And then we go through the broken world, and we then at some point reconcile who we were created to be. That's exactly right, David. I mean, like my experience is that.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
you're
indeed.
I think that you're right.
That's also how it feels. Just I don't know, the whole um, um, even like when I remember when I first met Jesus, and just when I started discovering more of what it meant, like life without just that wasn't just about me, but just about life itself and about other people. When I started to discover that, I started to see more and more how estranged I was with being myself.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, um, I mean, it's a life journey. It's not like anyone who's listening this, if you feel like I've got this together, believe me, there will come a moment when you will come together a part of you. You'll find a part of yourself that's like, no, that's not me. That is something I want to be, or that is something that I thought I was, but I did it out of shame or out of negligence
Mm,
or whatever it is.
mm,
Um, and so I feel you totally, and it's beautiful because if you read Genesis, you see that God comes to the people that are hiding in
mhm,
the only way how they know how to hide themselves in this vicious world, and God asks them, "Where are you, and why have you been hiding?"
mm, mm,
And it's actually the question of responsibility that comes up. Why? Why?
Mhm.
Ownership. Why have you done this? Why are you not the person I created you to be? And then God bringing the people back on a road that is still going right now, back to reconciliation,
yeah.
that we are a part of. I feel you totally in what
Mm,
you're saying. It is so beautiful, man. And I feel like the way how you, like you say, like there is, like you say, like that is part of my calling, I feel that is exactly what the world also needs. And there's a lot of people that need to have that calling, because there are a lot of people that actually need people to guide.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
you
thanks.
know, yeah.
I think you're spot on, David. I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it's all this, everything that I'm saying. I did not come up with it.
Mhm.
I have a great therapist. I've had
Shout out
wonderful.
to therapy.
Shout out to Carlos Alcantara. Alcantara Wellness. Um, I have an amazing therapist. I have an amazing mother. I have wonderful mentors in my life that
Mhm,
look me square in the face and tell me when I'm acting like a fool.
Mhm.
mhm,
And they say, this behavior you need to look at, that behavior you need to look at, that you need to change. I have many, many people that point out self sabotaging behaviors to me all the time.
mhm,
And we need that if we want to grow, we need that.
mhm,
So anything that I'm saying has come from something someone else has said to me.
mhm,
And I imagine the same is true for the two of you because you were in this discipleship program. And again, everything is a response.
mhm,
We rarely come up with something on our own. God does that.
mhm,
God does that. But I don't think that we do that. I think we're responding to him saying something, or responding to something else said to something else someone said to us,
yeah.
or like your discipleship training or your discipleship. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, for instance, like even the idea of revelation is just our a sudden understanding of something that God already taught you, something that was already given, the
That's
sudden
exactly right.
understanding of that. Even that thing, what we see as something that is so huge within our faith, is still a response.
Oh my
Worship
gosh.
also
Can I
is
can I
also
use that?
self-response. Yeah, go for it.
Can I use that? A revelation is just a sudden understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my, I'll quote you for sure. What's your last name and how do you say it?
You want to do it in the Dutch way or in the English way?
Do it in the Dutch way, of course.
David de Haan.
David de Haan.
Yes. There you go.
David de Haan.
Yeah, that's it.
What's Raji in the Dutch way?
Tell me.
Uh, Raji would be Raji, I think.
Raji.
Yeah, Raji.
There you go.
Raji. Depends a bit.
So tell the people what you have learned through your experience, maybe even getting into what led to breaking down that wall. What was in the way? What was that an issue of pride? Because that's something I know I've gone through. I've had to let go of pride to get to places of vulnerability because I didn't want people to see who I was behind that wall of an entertainer.
Mm-hmm. Before I get there, we have to define vulnerability though, because it's such a cultural buzzword now that has myriad definitions. And I actually think that vulnerability, intimacy, and transparency are three very different things that can work together, but they're not actually all the same thing. And they are, that's my opinion now. They're used interchangeably. So when you say vulnerability, what do you mean?
I mean, the place where you are one with the creation that God made.
Whoa.
That's good. But
okay,
I do
go ahead,
I
David.
do want to ask then in a second question though. How do you define that without putting in religion, like our own, like it's really easy to put in our Christianese words to define it in a way that we know from our perspective, but to put it broader, also for people that have, because vulnerability is something that everyone has to find, and I believe we have in that such a blessing because God is like directly helping, and that is available for everyone. Um, yes, that is a shameless plug to follow Jesus.
For you.
But still, to put it in perspective for people that don't know the understanding of what it means to come in, in closeness with the Creator and in the reality of the Creator. What does it mean for, using, let's call it normal words? Can you define it that way?
I would say vulnerability is when you have let go of pride. And I mean that by letting
That's
go.
a very good answer.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
that's
then I'll
really
end it
That's a
there.
very good answer. And I've never heard anybody say it that way, but keep going.
Yeah, vulnerability is the act of letting go of pride. And I would define pride as putting yourself above not only others, but above God, which in a way is the ultimate sin. If we really want to get there, it's making ourselves God. And I feel like God, the first thing he would want to do is break that down because we are not God and we are far from being God. So he gives us, that's why I've always thought that people that are so naturally gifted with facing fear and being in front of people and performing, I so often think he puts us through seasons where we have to be our most vulnerable because a lot of us have so much pride to break down because we love the attention. We love the spotlight on us, but it's not the spotlight on Jesus as much as we think it is, as much as we are thinking because we're starring in a play at the church, it's on Jesus, but really it's on us.
Right.
So God wants to remind us that while you aren't as quick to run away from fear as others are, you're quicker to make that fear facing ability about yourself and not about me.
David?
It's not a complete answer, but
I'm sorry.
I would say
No, I think his answer. You're talking about your own.
yeah. I would say vulnerability is the accepting that you're broken. Uh, and
Yeah.
let me tell you why. This goes in many ways. In our perspective, from our belief, I'd still come back to the idea of Adam in the garden,
Mm-hmm.
where him being broken also looked at him walking with God because he accepted the position that he was with God as friend, but also as Almighty. You know, God was God Almighty back then as well. But I think this world has such a like our lives, our societies have huge problems with accepting brokenness. Even our churches do. Like everything is come as you are, but as you come as you are, you also need to be pure, and you also need to be this and need to be that, and you need to practice this or that. You know, there is we put vulnerability always together with just expecting things from other people as well, just expectance. And I would say that vulnerability and expectance don't go together. I think vulnerability is separate from expectance because being vulnerable means that you have nothing else to give than who you are. So there is this feeling that I have, like I feel right now, like in the last months, I feel so vulnerable. And the reason why I feel vulnerable is because I feel a bit broken, you know? And it's in the moments when I feel like when God is, you know, chiseling away the stone. Like, you know, that scripture in Isaiah where God is chiseling away the stone in what would become Israel. And there is, the chiseling is never nice. The statue that comes out of it is beautiful, you know? And God is making a beautiful statue out of people. But it is still, the chiseling still happens. It still happens. And I think vulnerability is accepting that God is chiseling and that you are being chiseled and that you are being made more beautiful and beautiful, like while time progresses. And also to show that. Because like even when we try to be vulnerable, if you look at society and we try to portray vulnerability, it's always being put in a certain context of politics, you know, in protests. Oh yeah, we are society, we feel this and we feel that, so we want to do something about it. And then vulnerability becomes an action. And so there's never a moment in society where people stand still and say, I am vulnerable, period. I think apart from people that are being, you know, eventually even sometimes forced into therapy sessions and have to say like, I am vulnerable, you know, and having to be made broken during acting classes, or, you know, needing to repent before God. There is few moments when people actually dare to actually be properly vulnerable. And so that's why I say like it's vulnerability means accepting that you're broken.
Accepting broken.
Yeah. That's good too.
To give the people some practical application without spending $500 on an acting class or a $200,000 on an NYU scholarship, or not scholarship, tuition.
Right.
What are some exercises that we can do to break down that pride and accept that broken person, or even love that broken person?
Well, I think there's a difference between accepting your brokenness and staying broken. Because I think that Jesus is about the journey to wholeness. Otherwise, why would we choose him? So there is the acceptance of my brokenness. I accept that I am broken. And I accept that you and you in your power can make me whole. And so what I think vulnerability is not tapping out when it gets hard. It's the Brené Brown answer, actually. Vulnerability is just staying in when something gets hard. And which I think points about like getting over your pride, because in order to stay in when something gets hard, you have to lay your pride aside, because it's your pride that tells you to get out. And then also accepting that you're broken. So it's, I mean, it's all those things. But so first, I think recognize that there is brokenness, and accept the brokenness inside of you. Accept Jesus as wholeness and how he is the journey and the path. The path to wholeness is paved with Jesus. Like, that's what that is. And then along the journey, when things get really, really hard, don't tap out. Stay tapped in when something is really hard. That for me is ultimate vulnerability. And then transparency is when you tell the truth. You can tell the truth and run. That's not vulnerable. You can tell the truth, because people say, oh, let me just be really vulnerable with you right now. And then they'll tell you the truth or some deep, dark secret, but then they'll run. That's not vulnerable at all. That's just transparency.
Right.
Intimacy is when I share a deep personal truth with you that now you have the power to disown me based on something deep and personal that I've shared with you. If I share something deep and personal and risky with you, that's me being intimate. It's also true. So that's me being transparent. And then when I stay, when it gets hard, that's me being vulnerable. You see the difference there?
I do.
Between all three of those things. So that's just my opinion. And so when you ask me, what are some practical things we can do to break down the pride? Is that what you're saying? The first thing we can do to break down the pride, one, accept that you're broken, as David said. Two, get over the pride, as Josh said. But also, how do we get over pride? That's a great question. How do I do that? I can tell myself I want to do it, but how do I get over the pride? I think the way that we get over pride is by understanding fully, I am no better than anybody else.
That's so good. Come on. Yeah.
I'm not better than anybody else. I have the same body with the same appendages. You poop, I poop.
Wow.
We are all the same thing. No matter what we believe in, we are all the same thing. I'm not, privilege doesn't make me better. My brain doesn't make me better. My skin color doesn't make me better. My gender, my sexuality, whatever. None of those things. I am the same because I came from the same thing, and I will return to the same thing when I am done. Physically, I will return to the same thing. And so in the way, because pride says me only, I am the best. But when we can say, you know what, that person over there is just as talented as I am, is just as smart as I am, is probably more talented or more smart than I am. That's how we can get over the pride. And then when we get over the pride, then we are set up to begin to take the walls down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
You know
amazing.
that there's this the saying in English, get off your high horse.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what it is. That's literally what it means to get off, like to lose pride.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting idea, because it's also get off your high horse also means it requires action from your side. It's not going to happen magically, It's not you are not literally not leveling with other people at that point, and you are giving yourself more status. You need to let go of status as well.
Bingo.
Your high horse.
That's the word.
So
status is the word, actually. Let going of status, and because status games are the worst things in the world. They're just awful. And then once we're over the pride, once we let go of the status, like you say, David, once we get the pride out of the way that says I am better than everybody else, not true. Once we can accept that we are all the same, then you will allow yourself to make mistakes. And that's where creativity fully shows up, is in the allowance of mistakes. So a wonderful, I think she has an Oscar. Does Carol Kane have an Oscar? Somebody Google that. Carol Kane. Does she have an Oscar? There's a nomination, at least. When I was in New York, I ran into her in a lobby in a building where I was training. And I said, oh my God, Carol Kane. And she was like, yes, I know. And I said, do you have any?
Yes, I know.
That's what people always say. Oh my God, you're Tom Hanks. Yes, I am. I said, do you have any advice for beginners? And she said, never be afraid to make your mistakes, because inside of the mistakes, you'll find your greatest moments. Wow. And in order to allow ourselves to make mistakes when we're creating, whether it's acting or writing or painting or dancing or singing or building your business, that's creation of its own kind. You have to allow the mistakes. And what allows us to make mistakes is getting over the pride and understanding that my self-worth is not in whether or not I make mistakes, because that's what pride tells you. Pride tells you I am worthy because I haven't made any mistakes. That is pride. That is a lie. It's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you put the pride aside and say that my self-worth is not in whether or not I make a mistake, my self-worth is in the fact that the creator of the universe knows me intimately and personally and wants to walk with me whether or not I'm making mistakes, then you understand I can make a mistake because he's not going to leave. And then when I can make a mistake, I can do the greatest work ever.
That's great. Wow. That's really great. Thank you for saying every bit of wonderful thing. Actually, you already answered my question. I was going to ask if you knew of anyone that, any example that you had, but you right away had somebody in mind, which is amazing. Before we wrap it up,
2 Emmys, by the way. She won
yeah,
2 Emmys.
won 2 Emmys. There you go.
Carol Kane. Oh yeah, I've got advice from everybody.
Both in the 80s, 90s, no 80s, both in the 80s.
We like to, because we have such a deep conversation, we like to wrap it up and ask just a really fun, completely random question, the most random question in the world. I got this question from one of my favorite podcasts by Joseph Gordon-Levitt called, I can't remember what it's called.
Well, certainly not Creationship Goals.
It's not Creationship.
I love that title.
Anyway, it's a Joseph Gordon-Levitt podcast. It's something creativity. I haven't listened to it in a while, but Raji.
Hi.
Is cereal soup?
Define soup.
However you define it.
Oh, he does communication.
Someone look up soup. Someone Google it.
Okay, I'll go for it. Wait. Okay. Soup. Now I get different soup.
You just wanted like a yes or a no, didn't you? Now
no, I wanted
sending you on like a wild goose chase.
I like the goose chases.
Okay, so soup, a liquid dish, typically savory, and made by boiling meat, fish or vegetables, etc. in stock water. That is Oxford.
Oh, then no. No, cereal is just cereal.
Okay, its own thing.
According to that, yeah, its own thing.
But wait, second definition of soup is a substance or mixture regarded as resembling soup in appearance or consistency.
Oh, then yes.
In your definition, would you define it as soup?
No.
Okay.
No.
Very communicated very clearly.
Yeah.
Cereal is not soup.
Not to me, it's not.
Well, thank you, Raji. That was incredible. I took a lot away from that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. To end it, where can people find you? What are some things you're working on?
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram, Raji Ahsan, RAJIAHSAN, at my website, rajiahsan.com. Things that I'm working on. I had the pleasure of shooting an episode of Dave, the comedy Dave on FX, Hulu, something that's coming out soon, I think. I am finally. I had a talk show for about 3 years when I was in New York called Making Brews and Paying Dues that some friends and I made together. That is transitioning finally into the Raji Ahsan show. And very soon that will show itself online somewhere, wherein we talk about human connection and how to connect and why it breaks down. And I get to interview some of my favorite people in the world. And then I'm always making stupid stuff on Instagram.
Amazing.
I think.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. You can find me, Josh, at Josh Volcano on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, you can find me at david.rdh on both my Instagram and my TikTok. And you can find us on Instagram on @CreationshipGoals. So please follow us.
Give them a follow.
Share. Yeah, give us a gold star on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen. Just share it, like you mean it. And if you have any suggestions on who we have to add to the show, just let us know. Send us a message. Feel free to ask questions. We might even incorporate them.
Great. Well, thank you, Raji.
My pleasure.
We will see each other again soon.
Yes, we will.
Bye.
Bye, David.
Ciao.